Tony. Now, a few weeks ago, I was rifling through my list. Well, it's actually a wish list of people I'd love to speak to on the show. And I sent a few notes soaked with my eternal optimism and trust in the kindness of others to respond with the same level of enthusiasm. And I reckon it was less than a few hours that I received a reply from today's guest with something along the lines of, would love to, thank you. And I've put it straight in my diary. Such a simple, thoughtful and kind gesture that brought so much happiness at my end. Anyway, we've since caught up over the Zoomer and I discovered that this man really does walk the talk on what he yaks on about. Josh Reid Jones, he's the CEO and founder of the Just Be Nice project. It's actually the only organisation in the whole world that identifies and manages impact opportunities for organisations and turns them into help for people in need. Josh is an expert in social impact, purpose, happiness, mental health and corporate social responsibility. So without further ado, I welcome you, Josh, with much gratitude, open arms and an open heart to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm hoping that you're going to spread some happiness in Studio One today. We've already had quite a bit of happiness, a little bit of gratitude to our president, Phil Edwards, who got us on air this morning.
Good on you, Phil.
And Phil is actually at home with COVID, juggling the upcoming VFL match between Collingwood and the Hawks later after this show, but took his time out to get us on air and recorded so people can hear the show later.
Go the Hawks.
Go the Hawks. Josh Reid Jones, what does it feel like being you today?
It feels good. Yeah, I feel good. It's a rainy day outside. If anyone listens from far enough away or in the future when they don't know what the weather is, it's like a pretty rainy, grey day. So it's a perfect day to be sitting inside for a little yarn. And I got up and grabbed a coffee and headed in and looking forward to it. I'm just juggling these headphones in a minute. So if you hear me fussing around, it's just because they're clicking off and on a little bit, but
just jiggle your.
It's just the jiggling. I'm just jiggling over here, but I'm like, if you can hear the jiggling, I'm sorry.
Well, that's great. At least we can jiggle and joggle. And as you said, it is a typical Melbourne day here today, and we do have listeners from all over the world. So, but we are grateful. We're grateful for water. Grows our plants, and at my house, it grows weeds.
Yeah.
Josh, I'm going to say something to you.
You can, yeah.
And then I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
Well, not go,
but
and
then I'm going to just go. Yeah,
let your
I'm just
mouth
going to walk
go.
out within a minute of starting. Yeah, that's good.
Well, that depends. Anyway, here we go. Creating extraordinary positive change by helping people make ordinary positive change. Please expand.
Well, it's many years ago when you sit around and you think about how to best articulate the stuff you're trying to do. And, that was basically what I came up with as a way of trying to communicate why do what I do and what I do in the process. And essentially what I'm trying to encourage people to understand and to lean into is to find the ways to make the small adjustments that make the biggest difference, generally speaking. So it's a lot of it comes to keeping people doing what they're really good at. It comes to people like not necessarily trying to do some massive grand thing. It's pretty tempting, particularly in a social media age, to think, I want to have an impact, but the only thing that matters is if I can claim a huge purpose and a huge thing and want to do this huge outcome and blah blah blah. And because of that, I think we the people who need the best help actually don't get it. I think it sort of pulls away from that. So to create extraordinary change, positive change by helping people make ordinary positive change is what are the ways in which we can adjust our very human impulses and understandings and the material resource that we have to hand to create the biggest possible positive change for people who need it and communities who need it. Not just the ones near us, not just the ones that we're maybe more aware of than others, but everywhere. And so that's where I start from always, the ordinary change. And by combining enough positive movement in that way, then we can start to move towards extraordinary positive change. But I always tell people it's not easier to help 1 million people than it is to help one. So we start close and then we work our way out usually, and that's the best way to make sure people are getting good assistance.
And you find the ripple effect is real.
It's not really, it's something about, it's not just a ripple. I don't want to overstate what helping one person can do. People are really tempted to overstate it. Rather, I'd put the importance on properly helping one person. So if you help people a bit, but you don't finish the job, it's possible that some help is worse than no help. And the example I always give that is like, if you told me today, if we'd come in this morning, had a lovely coffee and we're setting everything up, and you said, it turns out that I had a scan the other day and I've got some plaque on my aorta and my heart. Well,
I thought you were going to say on my teeth.
It's quite dangerous. It's high risk, blah blah blah. And I feel that's terrible, I certainly don't want you to just pass away while we're doing this, and that's no good. And I feel like I should do something. And if I pull my little pocket knife out and then start trying to have a go at fixing it, that's terrible. It's a shocking thing to do. And, let's say you survive and that's great, fantastic. But I'll get hauled in front of a courtroom and they'll go, "What were you doing?" And I go, "Well, shouldn't I do something? Isn't it better to start somewhere? Doesn't she need some help?" And they'll go, "No, it's not better because you don't know what you're doing. And in fact, you've made it worse and you've made her worse." That's true of every kind of help. So just because you become aware that someone needs a hand, trying to dive in well beyond your area of expertise and do these huge things and do these things that require very specific skills and a huge amount of infrastructure around them to deliver well, sometimes can leave people worse.
And I guess when I said ripple effect, I don't mean that it's about people helping others. And you and I had almost a little stout, I think, on the Zoomer the other day about what I consider. I mean, I don't help and I don't give advice because I feel that help is a very dangerous place where people wade in, not actually realising what commitment they're making to another person or a community, whatever that extends to. I was actually brought up on this yesterday myself because I'm very, very conscious about if I'm maybe virtue signalling, which has become a thing that we talk about. And I was having a chat with George Danikian, who's a great friend of this show and a friend of mine and a wonderful man. And he said, "What were you doing this morning, Rae?" And I said, "I was down at my men's shed and mucking around with the guys, and I donated them a drum set for their new music program." He said, "No, you didn't." He said, "You chucked out something that you didn't need and they were really cool to take on your piece of crap." And I said, "You're absolutely right."
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't me making this grand gesture of a donation of this drum kit. I really did need to get rid of it. And it was so convenient that I could offload it at the men's shed. I thought, there you go, George, you've brought that up to me myself. And I think being very thoughtful about how we give, how we receive, and how we create gesture is part of that ripple effect.
Yeah, look, and it is, but also to focus on the effect that happens after you do a good thing is to look through the good thing. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying do the good thing because it's a good thing. If it didn't cause a single ripple, if me helping you until you were better and you dropped dead a week later, it's still worth it. It's worth it on its own. If there isn't if I don't get anything back, if there's no, it'll come back to you in the future, good karma, blah, 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 it's good on its own. And I think sometimes people, it's not a problem to say that generally speaking, yes, it does cause a positive ripple effect, and everyone benefits when we look after people better. But I think we look through the help we're doing right now, just like we look past the people near us to try and help people far away or people that somewhere else. Help people because it's intrinsically good. If it doesn't cause a single ripple, you should do it anyway. If you never get anything back, you should do it anyway. And what we need to do instead of worrying about what the ripples are first is to worry about, did we actually finish the job with this person? Did they get the best possible help they could get?
But I guess, it's not our ripples that we make that we should be conscious of, because I'm very famous in my family, especially with my son, Rory. He's listening in at the moment. He will say, as I'm speaking, I'll talk about how nor should we ever have to know the impact that we've made on others. As long as we are being kind, as long as we are caring, nor should we need to know the effect. And if we're seeking that, then that becomes about you.
It depends on if it's an effect or an outcome. I think we need to know about the outcomes. That's really important.
But if you didn't know, it doesn't matter. If you're so concerned about finding an outcome, you're going to miss the next opportunity.
So we make very clear distinctions between being nice and doing good for that exact reason. Because people when you talk about these things, just be nice it's called just be nice for, like, specifically because it's something everyone can do. Everyone can be a bit nicer.
But if I was splitting hairs, how do you define nice?
I'm about to tell you. Yeah, so that's because of course people try to split hairs all the time. And being nice is about how you carry yourself in the world. It's about what you're doing. It's an output thing. But doing good is about the other person. They need to get to an outcome. I can walk through and be nice to everyone and have not solved anyone's problems, which is fine. It's okay to be nice. As a starting point, it's a great starting point, but it's a woeful finishing point because you can walk past 10,000 rough sleepers, 50,000 sick kids, 2,000 people that are starving to death, say, I hope you have a lovely day, smile and wave, hand out a few high fives, and walk off to your mansion where you're throwing out 2 tons of wasted food, where you've got 200 empty rooms, and you've been nice, but you haven't really done any good because the people that you're trying to help haven't got the outcomes that they need. So to do good the doing good is based fully on whether someone else, the person or people you're trying to look after, get the outcome that they need, that they want. It gives them that agency that allows them to sort of pursue the opportunities that they want to pursue and live into all the possibilities that they want to live into. Being nice is just you carrying yourself in a way that's where you're trying to make sure that, like, every interaction is like a positive interaction. You're being nice to people in a way that you feel like is nice. Different people think different things are nice, and that's okay. And we do that as a sort of North Star about how you carry yourself. But the doing good means you have to be on the hook for what happens to this other person. This other community need to get the outcome that they're after, or the good isn't done yet. And if we tap out too early and we leave people hanging, then what we end up with is systems of help that don't finish the job. And those are some of the most disappointing systems of help, sometimes worse than not having any help, because you've let people down, or you've made things worse, or you've kind of like extracted some vulnerability out of them, usually to even ask for help or engage with it, and then left them hanging. And that is the bit that's disappointing to me. So we say, yeah, be nice because everyone can do it. It's how you carry yourself. But when it comes to doing good, there are some pretty specific. You can definitely see like whether the outcomes are being reached or not. And people drop off again and come back and drop off and come back, and that's fine.
Can I ask a specific question about an experience I had last week with a client? And he's a managing director of an organisation, and he's actually said these words. We were talking about, the kindness, I guess, more than anything. He said, the kindest thing I do with my staff is tell them exactly what they're doing wrong. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, well, I'll tell somebody if they're an a-hole. I will just go and say, you're this, because they need to know. And I think that's a kind thing to do, to let somebody know. And I feel that perhaps that doesn't resonate and feel like kindness to the recipient of that. And I reversed it for him and asked him how he would feel if somebody bowled into his office and delivered that, depending on what's going on with his day. So when I said about splitting hairs on being nice, some people can feel that is an act of kindness. So how do we, it's very subjective, I feel.
Yeah, that's right. It has to be. And that's why it can't be like the outcome.
How do you measure then?
For instance, I swear, right? I swear, and people go, I've had people literally say to me, it's not nice. Like, oh, swearing. Oh, that's not very nice. And I'm like, cool. With all due respect, I don't think it matters. From my point of view, that's something that I do. You don't think it's nice. That's okay. And of course, I'll try and not swear in front of you. And it's contextual sometimes. I'm not swearing that much on the radio right now. I don't swear, maybe in front of my grandparents when they were around and all that kind of stuff. But I do swear, and I don't consider it not nice to swear. Some people just have a blanket, it's not nice to swear, period. Okay, so don't swear. Do people have ideas that definitely fall short of other people's expectations of what being nice is? Yes, definitely. No question. But you've got to use it as a bit of a North Star. And I think if you don't take into account how other people receive things, what's going on with other people, are you gonna be able to be a positive moment in someone's day, which is sort of that other caveat that the interactions are leaving people better? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. You're probably not going to get that feedback. So you can have an idea that is like this managing director, that honesty is really important and that people are better if you tell them the truth. You can still maintain that while taking the time throughout your life to audit the way that your honesty is received, to try and work out better ways to deliver that honesty that you
But
think
I think
is
that's
nice.
the key thing when you see how it's received,
Yeah.
because there are so many more indicators than our words. There's our face, and when you
Exactly.
and our conscience. When
Yeah.
you feel that thing inside of you go, oh, that doesn't feel right. That's your gut saying it probably isn't. That's connected to a vortex in your brain.
Yeah, and you can get it wrong. I think that's part of the thing. It's not about having a set of things that's always right. Anyone who's coached a team or been in a team of any kind, like bit of tough love works for Pete. It doesn't work for John. Push this guy a bit harder, give this guy a bit more space. Like, these are things but you can only know if you pay attention. And again,
Or even ask.
well, you can ask as well, but again, this is where it comes to this thing about the ordinary positive change. And one of the primary things that sort of sits over the top of everything that we try and do, and everything I'm always harping on about, is trust. Trust is incredibly important in the delivery of help. It's incredibly important to get people to lean into it. Arguably the most important thing. And to build trust, you need the time and effort with people, which means, again, the ordinary changes: hang in there, pay attention, be around for the long game. Don't look for the thing necessarily that'll work on every stranger that you meet. Don't undersell the impact you can have on the people you've already got around you that you know well, where you've built some trust up and you understand it. So this guy, he might have a bunch of people around him where he's kind of worked that out for them. A little bit harder here, a little bit softer here. Great. Trying to find the thing where he goes, I just always tell everyone what I think all the time. You've got to then put that into context. Like, it's not going to work the same all the time because this person doesn't know you. Like, you tell the barista, this coffee sucks and he needs to know because this coffee's, people are going to be watching it and going, this guy's, maybe that's not the best way to deliver it. And maybe for the barista, that's what he needed to hear. But I would guess probably not. That's not the way he wanted to hear it. No one wants to hear it like that. But that's why it's so important that you focus on where do you have the trust to make the intervention, to have the chat, to do those things. And if you're not earning that trust as much as you're trying to do the thing, then you're probably going to have an imbalance in what's possible for you to change for somebody.
But not always do we know what to do either. I think this man is a wonderful man because he invests in his people, and that's why I'm there as his consultant to help him develop better ways of interacting. So he acknowledges that he doesn't know everything and that he might need some other objective piece in his life to help him still keep the version of himself, but adjust those things along the way, which is, I love that work because that's change that does impact others as well. Yeah,
well, the fundamental thing that he believes is that honest feedback is good. And then, okay, so in the delivery of it, what agency are you giving the people on the other end of it? And that's a juggle with all kinds of attempts for any kind of community development or social impact. Is you're always juggling this agency for the people that you're looking to help with, alongside the support that they need and the direction you want to give them. Same with kids. You tell them what to do all the time, never let them make a decision. That's not great. You let them make all their decisions and they're eating ice cream 9 times a day. Also not great. And the juggle, it's not an art or a science. I say this, it's not art or science, it's human. The juggle is the correct amount of direction, the correct amount of support, and the appropriate amount of agency for the people you're trying to help. Understanding that there are options that everyone doesn't know exist in the world, and there are challenges that everyone doesn't know exist in that interaction. And you've got to be aware, if you want to do good, if you want to make sure people get where they want to be, that you're constantly not overdoing it so that they drive the ship in the wrong direction, not overdoing it so you tell them what to do all the time so they don't feel any sense of agency, and not doing it in a way where you're not then providing all the follow-up assistance that they need to get the things that they are trying to achieve. So you tell them, it'd be great, for instance, to tell your kid, it would be great if you went to university. That becomes an option. The agency piece is letting them decide, and then the support piece is making sure that they're able to participate in their education up to the point where they can go to uni and it makes sense. Well, they've got some options when they go there. If they say, I don't want to go, saying you have to go is not great. But if they want to go do something else, and you go, okay, well, how do we put the support around you to do those sorts of things? So it's always a juggle, and that's why it's difficult to just have like one thing that you do that makes a difference for everybody, because you're always juggling all of those things with every relationship and every interaction.
That's right. And I think resisting the temptation to tell people what to do is a really good start. Just be kind. Just be kind.
Don't worry, people do that all the time. It's okay.
I know, and I like the distinction as well. But Just Be Nice project, it sort of came to me at 4:15 this morning when I'm still wrapping my head around what is it that you do.
Yeah.
What does Josh do
First
when
of all,
you...
what are you doing up at 4:15 in the morning? It's far too early to be thinking about all.
I go to bed really early.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're one person who's getting across a lot. So there's a whole bunch of questions that come into my head. How do you take care of yourself?
Yep.
Blah, 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 all of those kinds of things. But then I drilled down into my head and I imagine that you, in some respects, go into organisations and help people understand what they can do. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's kind of two bits, which is probably help it make sense. On the one hand, is the delivery of help. So that's taking people who need a hand. This could be individuals. The outcomes that we work towards, this sort of base level equality of opportunity outcome that we set as the outcome to which we need to get people, is that they're housed, is that they're employed, and that they have good mental health outcomes. So I could go on for an hour on each one of those about how that actually looks. But essentially, from there, if you're 15 years old with lots of promise, then that's the base you need to just go and fulfill all your potential. If you're a 70-year-old recovering alcoholic who's got a little part-time something, who lives somewhere that's safe and isn't struggling with their mental health challenges, addiction, whatever, then that's great for you too. You need at least those things to be taken care of. They need to be sorted, or you're at risk of going backwards on any of the other ones, which means that you're in strife. You got good mental health and a job and nowhere to live. Good luck maintaining all of that for any period of time. If you've got a house and you've got a job and you've got terrible mental health, you're going to struggle to maintain it in every possible combination. So we had to pick an outcome. That was the outcome that we decided years ago. There's the base level that we work towards. So for individuals, it's about working with them until they get that outcome. In communities, it's about removing barriers to those outcomes on a broader scale.
So you work with individuals, so as a therapist?
No, it's not, because this is the thing. There is no term, because no one else does this. It's like a weird hybrid of taking care of, organising a bunch of different things that need to happen.
So if I came to you saying I was one of these, which I'm probably all of them at some stage.
Yeah, of course, yep.
How would you...
You get assessed at the beginning.
At a physical place?
Can be, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's physical. We try, one of our principles is to try and do face-to-face stuff as often as possible, keeping people with people. So
do you actually have a centre?
No, so before COVID, we did have an office, and then COVID, we closed the office. But that will come up when I tell you about the second bit of the whole thing. Okay. Basically, no one just comes to us directly. It's all referrals. Someone calls me up and says, I've got this woman, Rae, this is what's wrong with her. The referrer knows the information that we need. They ask for it. We go, okay, where is she? Box Hill. What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. We go, okay, either we feel like we've got enough resources on hand to be able to finish the job, make sure that you get to this outcome, or we don't. If we don't, then we might be able to direct you to some other places, direct this person to say, maybe call these other guys, but we don't have the stuff on hand to do it right now. And then so you are not being rejected. That's one of the first things. The dream is that in the future, anyone will be able to call up, either you or your friend or whatever, and say, my friend Rae is really struggling, or for whatever reason, I'm not sure what's going on, but we need a hand. And then we just say, cool, come in and we'll assess, and then we'll take it from there, pick up whatever needs to be picked up.
So for the benefit of people who are going, this sounds really interesting for me, they would come and see you, and then would you point them towards resources?
So, yeah, okay. So again, this is another thing that's very different, and it's the complete opposite of what you preach. So we take full responsibility for making sure people get these outcomes. We definitely help. We don't give advice. We don't do the things.
Please don't misinterpret
we dive in
what
and do
I
the
said
things,
either as well, because I think you may have misinterpreted that I certainly don't preach either. But
but
But I just want to just define that the help bit is something that we can unpack later, but keep going.
Yeah. So basically, we just get in and do what needs to be done until it's done. And that looks like coordinating a bunch of things. And it's different for every person.
Yep.
So our starting point is, what help does this person need, and how do we fill that need? Oftentimes there's a material challenge that's comes up for a lot of people. So it could usually start with something like potentially like a financial assessment. So that you go, I don't know what's going on. I'm a bit short on my rent, or this is happening. Get a financial assessment happening. That's done by a partner who does accounting. So we manage. I'll pause that for a sec. The second part of what we do is people put their hands up and say, we want to do good, we don't know what to do. Or we want to do good better. Organisations preferably, but also individuals. Then we go in and assess those organisations. So we do like an audit, and then we say, don't tell us what you think you can do to help. Tell us what you're good at. Tell us what you do every day. We go through this whole process and we say, this is where we think you can have the best impact. These are the things we think we can use. This is how we think we can use it. This is how we think we can fit in with your day-to-day operations and make the most of the aptitudes and the skills and the resources you have in your organisation right now. And you will become a part of the process. There's no one intervention that does everything. It just doesn't exist. There's no one thing. But there are lots of places that only do one thing. And so if you happen to walk into that place as someone in need, you might get that help. And then you go, oh, what about? And they go, we don't do that. And so then you're left hanging. So, you could, for instance, you could go to counselling, which is fantastic. And none of these things are intrinsically bad or wrong or anything like that. But you go to counselling, it's great. And then you say, cool, I'm stressed, I'm under the pump, my kids are going nuts, I'm a bit short on my rent, I'm really behind on my bills. And okay, well, we can talk about what's going on with you, and we can talk about some coping strategies, and we can talk about how to maybe better deal with your kids. But the bills, you're walking out of there, the bills are in the same spot when you leave this. If anything, they're probably a little bit down because you just paid for this counselling session. So we would say, okay, great. How do we ameliorate those challenges as well? That could be covering a bill. It could be having a look at how much you're earning. Let's see if we can change what's going on here. How do we help set up your situation so that you're earning enough to cover those bills, so that reduces that stress? Maybe we need to find something that fits in a weird time of the day because you've got to pick the kids up from school and do that stuff. Not a problem. And we will put together something that starts to take care of all of those things. So here's the work stuff. You're earning enough now. You've got someone to talk to. You've got potentially some recreational stuff because people can get isolated in those circumstances. We make sure that your house is okay, or that you're in the right place, or whatever. And 5 years ago, the housing stuff was the easy stuff and the jobs were the difficult thing because there weren't as many jobs. And now there's jobs everywhere and housing is a nightmare. So there's always something that's dominating, but again, it changes. So if we'd have fixed ourselves in place 6 years ago, we would be missing the mark now by miles because there's way less places and there's way more jobs, So, but also the jobs are paying about the same as 6 years ago, but things cost more. So we also need to look at what the hours look like and how that's working and blah, blah, blah. So we coordinate those resources. We're resourced by all those people and places that have said we want to do stuff.
Yes.
And then we coordinate all the bits of help that are needed for each person as they come in.
I think that's the thing that's making sense now that the puzzle's going together, because it just seems this enormous thing, help comes into this one funnel. But and I think I mentioned to you the other day on the Zoom, I've just done this piece of research for a client to gather a whole bunch of resources here in Australia and overseas for their industry. And, jumping down this rabbit hole of the amount of resources that we have here in Australia, some of them that just go nowhere.
Yeah.
And to do that due diligence to say what is a working active resource that, as you said, actually has more than one layer that keeps going and resonating with, once I've got this financial distress, who's going to take care of my kids? Where do I live at the same time? How do I get a job? And then that whole circle goes around, the cycle.
Yeah.
That we've got to be picking up every single bit of the experience of the person. As you said, you take one of them out, the whole card
Yeah, it just
falls
yeah
apart.
they just end up. I mean, anyone knows if the speed of the help kind of matters. Finishing the job as quickly as possible matters. Um, the challenge is in the space of looking after people is that a lot of the messaging from a lot of places is about really emphasizes simple stuff and how easy it is and how little you need to do to change someone's life. So it's very difficult to go through this process of explaining all the bits and pieces that we try and do because it sounds complicated to a lot of people who aren't used to hearing that kind of complexity in help. And I often say that what often happens to me is people go, it sounds complicated. And it's because they're not used to hearing that sort of thing.
Yes.
But we're sitting in quite a large building at the moment. It's pretty big. It's got lots of bits and lots of things in it. And at some point, this was just a piece of dirt. And if you came and said, "Oh, we want to put this huge building up with lots of bits," no one thinks that's too complicated, despite the fact it's going to be thousands of line items every day, maybe 2 years of work, couple $1 million, dozens of trades, hundreds of tradesmen, project managers, blah, blah, blah. And everyone goes, cool, because you're just going to do each bit in the right order when you need it until this whole building's done. But if I say I've got to help this person into some kind of counselling, plus help them into some kind of work, plus maybe cover some bills for a bit, plus maybe find some way to keep the kids at after school care for a minute or find someone to do it, plus try and get them into a local community something so they've got some connection to the community. People go, geez, that sounds like a lot.
Yes.
It sounds like too much.
Yes.
But it's not, it's only that much because your expectations of help are quite low. And so one of the ordinary changes people can make is to increase their aspiration for help for others and the amount of help that they want people to get.
Yeah. And I think the way that you've described that, I think sometimes we can't believe that there is help there, that we don't deserve it, or, somebody else deserves it more than us, so therefore that's the barrier. And I guess, my point about help that we kind of agree to disagree on is that I believe that enabling people, so what you're describing, how do you bring the person into that space and enable them and have them accountability for the receiving of that help and what they do with it? That's more my point.
Yep.
Is doling out help, ropes and ropes and ropes of it doesn't necessarily land in a place if the recipient isn't able to manage
Oh yeah, for sure,
that
100%.
piece with things like gratitude and accountability and responsibility, which all build purpose, which keeps people alive in my experience. Josh, we could...
I don't know, go with the brain explosion trying to cover all of these things in 30 minutes.
But also we could probably go for, the next half an hour and not have a break. But I would love to go to a break because there is so much more to you that we would love to be able to cover. Now, the first break in the show, I prepared to play a very first special guest song request. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty funny. It doesn't matter how many times I give instructions on this exercise, it never works out like I expect it. With you, pretty sure we discussed swear words.
Did we? I don't think we did discuss swear words in the songs. No, I thought it was swearing on the radio for talking, but I didn't. The first song, I didn't even twig that it was full of swear words. So I apologise for that.
You can't say them, but the people in the songs can. No, they can't. So Black by Dave, which is a great tune, I counted no less than 11 rude words.
Yeah, okay. All right. Like I told you, I swear, I probably don't hear it as much either. That's part of the deal.
So here goes. I'm going to give you a cryptic clue to help announce your first song. Are you ready?
Oh, God. Okay, yep.
Okay. Tattletale is the clue, which is another word for the name of the artist of a song that you've chosen.
Surely it's Fink.
You're onto this.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's a very good cryptic clue, though. Excellent. Yeah, only that was only ruling out the other ones. I couldn't have positively identified that, I don't think.
But I reckon you get the medal for the fastest off the blocks of any guess. I don't know if it's got anything to do with my really crappy cryptic.
No, that was excellent. That was
clues.
Very good. Very good.
So what does that song mean for you?
Look, Fink is one of my favourite artists. He's featured in my, the Spotify wrap-up favourite artist situation for years. Not everything was better in the past. It's a beautiful song. It's a lovely reminder that, not everything was better in the past. And the future, there's all kinds of wonderful things in the future, but it was also the one that fit into the 3 minutes 30 timetable. So there's dozens of songs of his that I really like. I thought I had to get it in somewhere.
So you did pay attention.
I did.
Okay, everyone, when we come back, we're going to rewind to where it all started for Josh and what put his feet on the path of where he is today in the world. You're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC. Don't go away. It's tuned in. Welcome back, or welcome to the show. I'm Rae Bonney. I'm sitting here with Josh Reid. He's the founder and director of trailblazing social enterprise Just Be Nice project. Now, I always promise to give shout outs to people when they text me in, and David from East Doncaster.
Shout out, David.
I work with David actually at a well-known social enterprise. They're a client of mine. They're called Ability Works Australia. And as the name suggests, Josh, they provide opportunity for those living with disability and social disadvantage. So I provide all of their mental health and wellbeing policy, strategy, programming for those living in that space to engage in purpose through employment. And David and I work closely together, focusing on his amazing abilities and also his, at times, debilitating anxiety that can often lead to life-threatening loneliness. And I know David loves listening in because it helps him with his loneliness. So, David, I'm wishing you a wonderful day today, and I look forward to seeing you. Yes, I'm going to be in tomorrow, and I'm also bringing my son Rory with me, who might help you with the nut world of Rory. He's my 14-year-old, and he loves going to Ability Works and working with the people and learning a lot about what it's like to live with disability and social disadvantage. It's unfortunately a space that gets rather hidden in our community, and I love emerging it here on 3WBC because it's a big part of our community. And these people that, some of the people at Ability Works have been there for like 50 years.
Awesome. Since
they were kids, needing to find purpose in life and a safe place to go where they're recognised. So I feel enormously blessed to be working down there.
We love that. That's fantastic.
I would love for you to come down actually one day, Josh.
Sure, yeah, I'll come down
and have a look and meet all the wonderful people and talk about what you do.
Yeah, it is wildly underrepresented space, and with about 1 in 5 Australians suffering from a disability, it's almost mind-boggling that 20% of the population
It's interesting
have a
that you say suffering a disability, because I know the community down there would say,
oh, well, yeah.
We don't suffer, we're fine.
Yeah.
We were born like this and we know exactly what to do.
Yeah, well, potentially suffering from invisibility, in the broader conversation, it's very difficult. It's very difficult when there are large numbers of people that struggle for a bunch of different reasons, and they are often the least visible people, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ability Works are quite amazing. They do a lot in inclusive design. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our people go out helping, public transport, airports, and designing things for people who live with disability, which have an enormous flow-on effect to people who don't have a disability.
They really do. Well, universal accessibility doesn't make anything harder for someone else. That's one of the it's one of the great design principles to get stuck in there. I really I would love to see more of that. It drives me nuts that there isn't more consideration for these things in projects more generally. But slowly we're all
it's people like you that make other people think, and that's what I was talking about, the ripple effect before. That's what I mean. Is you hear something and you go, didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah. And I get it all the time. Go, oh, I'm so happy I learned something today, something more that, we can consider. Yeah. Where were you born, Josh?
I was born in Melbourne, and then I grew up in Gunnar-Kurnow country, down the Lakes Entrance, Bairnsdale, East Gippsland for Victorians, non-Victorians. And then moved to the southeast of Melbourne when I was a kid, and sort of did my schooling, high school and stuff there.
What was school like for you?
Well, I've always enjoyed learning a lot. I've been a nerd my whole life, so the learning bit and the scholastic bit I've always sort of enjoyed and never really had too many issues with there. But at the same time, I had big curly hair, and I was a bit awkward and all that kind of stuff when I was younger. And so I suppose I got picked on a bit, and I struggled to find a place in primary school, probably in the early days of primary school, in particular, first few years. But I had a couple of good friends, and I used to go and spend time with the girls. I used to dance as well, and I'd do these things. So I'd spend time with the girls, and I remember lamenting the fact that the boys didn't want to play with me, and because I wasn't very good at sport. I didn't grow up in a sporting household until I decided to get good at sport. And then by the end of school, I was the captain of the footy team, and I went and played footy and did all this kind of stuff, and sort of got on top of it. So I had a bit of a mixed experience with...
Because you talk pretty openly about your experience of growing up in poverty and also violence as well. And I'm curious to know how much of that you had to hide when you were at school.
I think when you're a kid, certainly my experience, and I notice that poverty, first of all, poverty is often relative too. So people who are exposed, and now thanks to the internet, you're exposed to all the things. So now it's very obvious when you have much less than other people. But in the 90s and the 80s, I didn't know what was going on around the corner, really. So the things that were signs that we didn't have the same as others would be like weird things I talk about with my siblings sometimes. Go to someone's house, and like they would put the food on the table for everyone to help themselves. I'm like, Jesus, like I'm going to eat all this food. Like do they know how much I'm going to eat? Like how can they afford it? And then you go to someone and say, do you want fish and chips for dinner? And, we always said fish and chips, but it didn't mean fish because we couldn't afford fish. And then they said, do you want a piece of fish? I'm like, I want a whole piece of fish for myself. What are you, a millionaire? Like this is in 1992 or whatever. And you could feed a whole family with $2 worth of chips. So the things that I was comparing to at the time that sort of made it look like, we don't have the same, like are pretty weird things. Oh, you're allowed to make your own Milo? Like we don't even get Milo. How many spoons can I have before someone tells me off I'm costing too much money of Milo? And then as you get older, and I realised like, taking the notes into school to ask for an extension to pay for a day trip that was $20 that mum's got to pay off over 6 weeks because we got no money. The ease with which I spend $20 now on picking up some coffees for people in the office or whatever, it's crazy to me. And so all of that stuff, the holes in the shoes, the pants don't fit properly, all this stuff, you don't notice it the same way until you're a bit older and you reflect and you talk to more people and you find out what was going on with other people and you go, Jesus, we were doing it like really tough. It's weird to walk everywhere. It's weird to not have a tally. It's weird to not have shoes and have to wait till next term and whatever. You're just going to have to do it. And still incredibly lucky that my mother is a genius to turn the little that we had into all the amazing opportunities that I got to still have participate in my education without any handicaps. I still got to do activities. We managed to get to footy and do dancing and do these things, and my brother and sister the same. And so I really feel like I had just a really fantastic mix of those challenges and enough support to get through those challenges with some really wonderful experiences. So I don't begrudge any of it, but it certainly was challenging, and I keenly feel the stress. I've been aware of money since as long as I can remember. I've been conscious of how expensive things can be, how difficult it is not to ask for this, not to want this thing, to have to work for a while to put some money aside to pick up a thing if you want it and all that kind of stuff. And the overwhelming stress that Mum in particular was under in that environment, how difficult it is. But we also had really lovely times, and I've got 2 younger siblings, and we still I still speak to them daily probably, and I speak to Mum daily, and all these kinds. So on the balance of things, it was good. I really had lovely support, lovely people around, lovely community. Probably like objectively not the best schools, but a great education, and it all worked out okay.
Well, you're sitting here,
Yeah,
so something's worked out,
Yeah.
and the curly-haired geek who can't play sport, you've ironed out quite nicely. One might say.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you have outside of your family a mentor, protector, or idol that you really looked up to?
It's a great question. I've never really been deep in the idea, in the mentor thing, as in where I've been like, this person is a mentor. I've sought someone out as a mentor, but I have always been really interested in relationships with other people who know more, people who are older, to have a chance to get some guidance and get some feedback. But trust has always been really important for me as well. That's probably a thing, because when you're let down quite substantially by a parent in particular, then...
Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, look, my old man, he had many great attributes and a bunch of terrible ones. So he suffered himself from addiction and mental health issues. And anyone who's lived with people who are not wholly good and not wholly bad, and I'd say that's all of us, but some of the extremes are different for people. The goods were good and the bads were very bad, and the bads were violent, and they were at their worst. They were pointed at the most vulnerable parts of me as a kid, I think, and for my mother as well, who was in there and copying it, and I can't fathom what that looks like, because I'm not a parent, and I haven't tried to raise kids in that environment. But this sort of simple way that I tell people sometimes when it comes up is that, like, if your dad tells you that he loves you, and then he punches you in the face, you start to not be so bothered about what people tell you. You go, okay, cool. You can say anything, but what are you doing? And the challenge is that, the challenge was that the good times were good. He was capable of good and engaged, and taught me many very valuable lessons about social justice and looking after people and giving a shit and paying attention and learning and being accountable for your ideas and doing all these things. And also, he's probably said a handful of the worst things anyone's ever said to me, and did a handful of the worst things anyone's ever done to me. And that's a strange thing to carry around in one person who is also your father. So
it's amazing that you can encapsulate that all together.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like one counteracts the other.
No, well, for me, I always look at this thing like, I'm sitting here now in this moment with you. I live a life where there are difficulties, there are challenges, there are rubbish days, and some really wonderful days, and some really wonderful things, and I'm blessed with wonderful people. And if I'm here now like this, then, like you said earlier, like, it's kind of gone okay. It's in the wash, in the wash, it's all worked out okay. And I believe it's worked out okay because of the environment and the support that I've had. I don't take full credit for getting through the difficult times like I did it all myself. I credit the people and the opportunities that were around me that I was just lucky to get, that I sort of lucked into. You ask
it's kind of testament to what you do now.
That's right, yeah.
Is
look around the people that need help as much as to look at what they can do. And to sort of touch on your question from before, today when I leave here, I'm going to lunch with family who live in a house around the corner from where I grew up. And this family, their eldest son, Nick, and I went all through school together, from prep when we were 4, and we went all the way through year 12. Now, we went into a selective entry class in high school, so we went into like an accelerated program. So we had like a weird same class all the way through high school too, that most people don't get, because when you go to high school, you change classes all the time. And his family have always been like a really beautiful second family. His parents are still married. I'm going there for lunch today. Nick's now got beautiful twins. His little brother's like my little brother. And I have this sort of second family that's always been there, always been a really great example of just a loving, supporting environment. They were putting food on the table. Their mum, Nina, she's an amazing cook, and Greg was always a really wonderful influence. But I never talked about what happened, not because I didn't want to, or I felt I couldn't, or anything. Like, it just never came up. Like, on reflection, I didn't tell anyone at school what was happening, because I didn't consciously not tell anyone. It just never seemed to come up. It never seemed to be a thing. And so having these people who for 30 odd years have just been there, and they just love you and they just care, and they're not diving in and trying to do anything. that's always been a nice breather for me, and it's always been a really wonderful support. And what that's given them a chance to do, and Greg in particular, had this moment. I was about 14, I think. I did my first deb with Nick, not like with Nick, but we did the deb together with our partners, and I was like, oh, we're going to go to this after party at a friend's place, which was actually not far from here. We had friends down this way. And Mum, who was worried about me turning out like my old man, so she's worried about my relationship with substances and stuff. She thought, oh, I'm going to turn into some nightmare person. I've always been loud. I've always been big. I've always been very physical. Mum's only got sisters, so she's never seen teenage boys. So everything that I do that looks like remotely resembling an overbearing, violent dad, she's just terrified of, trying to beat it out of me. Like, absolutely not.
Not literally, of course.
Well, a little bit literally sometimes, yeah, because she was terrified, and that's okay, because she's traumatized and didn't get a break and has never seen a teenage boy. And so we would have these arguments, and she'd be like, wow, and didn't know what to do with me. And I was frustrated because I've been through what I've been through, but also I've always just been head first. Like, even as a toddler, Mum would be like, Mike would come home and I'd just be like, could you just wrestle Josh? Like, as a toddler, just wrestle him, because he's just full of it. I just love it. I've always been a really physical contact kind of person, So I'm like, I want to go to this after party. Mum's like, absolutely not. You're just going to get pissed. Absolutely not. And to put into further context, I was young when I started school, and then in this program we skipped a year. So I'm like 14 with 16, 17-year-olds. So everyone's a bit older. And of course, 2 years between us now doesn't make much of a difference. But when you're 14 to 17 is quite a big developmental gap, which now,
especially for boys.
That's right. And now I get it. At the time, I was like, whatever, man. Like, love will be one of the guys. And Greg said, no, it's all right. Let him go. And anyone with a single parent, and my father left him when I was like 10 or 11. Anyone with a single parent knows there's no like avenue to appeal usually when a decision is made. No, that's not happening. Well, I can't go to the appeals court, which is the other parent, and ask for like can we get a redo on this? Like, the decision's been made and I just got to be annoyed at it. But we were all sitting at the same table and Greg said, let the boys go. I'll go pick them up tomorrow. I was like, yes, thanks, Greg. Yeah, hell yeah. So we go to this party and do what any sensible 14-year-old boy does. I get drunk. We have the little after party, and Carlton Cold still tastes like high school to me. It's like, it's so irresponsible, but that's what happened. And nothing bad happened. We just had a lovely night, go to sleep, whatever. I remember Nick slept on a beanbag and he woke up and his back was all like, and Greg comes and picks us up and we're driving home. And I don't really remember the party that much. I don't really remember the deb that much. We got some photos. I remember, look, if you see them, we look terrible. But the drive home, we were coming down Springvale Road, and I have this moment where I remember the car had these like grey velour seats. It was like a Fairmont gear thing. It was maroon. It was quite big. Had a great sound system. All this stuff. We didn't have that, So it was always very impressive to me. And Nick was in the front seat and I was in the back. And Greg's driving along and he's like, "Oh, last night, well done." And he goes to Nick. He goes, "Mate, excellent work. We're really proud of you." And driving. And he goes, "And Josh, mate, we're really proud of you too." And I'm in the back seat, and I just like, I feel it now in my guts. I feel it right, like, like it just for whatever reason hit me right in the guts. Bit of the hormone soup, maybe my first hangover. But also I think that the timing of it amongst the things where you start to worry if you're going to turn out like your old man, because obviously Mum's worried about it and people might be worried. So maybe there's some truth in that, and frustration and trying to find your place in the world and all the things, and you're trying to do well. And for whatever reason, it was just the right moment that it just felt like it bumped me back. Like, you're going okay. Like, you're not, it's going all right. It's going all right. It made a big difference. And at the time, you don't know. At the time, I knew like that it got me in the feels, and I got a bit teary. Quiet tears.
I was going to ask
like,
if you cried.
I didn't cry, but just, you get the, and you get the little water in your eyes. And, that was it. But you don't realise you're at the bottom and on your way up until later anyway. You can't tell when you're at the bottom because, life goes up and down, up and down. So on reflection, you go, that was really significant. And one of the things that taught me was that you don't learn the words to knock people on to the right path or to sort them out. There's no words. But what you do is you get the chance to earn the opportunity to one day maybe accidentally say the thing. It's not the first time anyone told me they were proud of me. I had success in all kinds of areas in my life. Did well at sport, did well at school. I had good friends, all this kind of stuff. But a guy who had been around forever, who I respected and trusted, at that time just happened to say the thing, and not that he didn't mean it, but like he wasn't trying to sort me out. He just said the thing because he felt the thing, and it just happened to be the right time and the right moment where for me that just knocked me back and on track a little bit and went, steadied the ship a little bit for that time, which as a 14-year-old boy is an important time. These are important times to make decisions about what you're going to do. And so he had that opportunity from all the other stuff. It wasn't, I'm proud of you, like telling people, I don't want people to, there's a temptation to try and hear things like that and go, oh, you've got to tell people you're proud of them. Well, that is important, but it's more important to be the kind of person who might say it to someone and then they take it. You've got enough trust and they care enough and that it might one day be the thing. But he's probably told me he's proud of me a dozen other times that didn't do that.
Well, that's right. And there's a big difference between being told you're cared for and the feeling of being cared for.
Yeah.
Is something else. And thank you for telling that. It's had me completely just mesmerised because it's just, again, just those simple things. As you said, you don't really, like, I'm sure he wasn't conscious of saying it, but the impact that he's had on you and the fact that you're still telling that story.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect, other people hearing that to go, wow, when was the last time I actually just held space for somebody, just held them in a space and really took notice.
Yeah. And how frankly boring for Greg to have been hanging on, like just being nice to this kid for at that time 10 years, but now 30 something years. He's not out there like, I need to have an impact, I'm going to try and do something. They're just there. It's just love.
Have you ever told him that story?
I actually wrote it I wrote an article and told the story, and I gave him the article before it got published, and he read it. I remember this quite well, and he read it and he looked up and he went, I'm sorry, mate. And I thought, I have buggered this story up, like that is not what I meant. And he's like, well, because in it as well, I gave a little bit more context about some of the things that have been happening. And we'd never really talked about it. We didn't really talk about that stuff at the dinner table of their joint. And he sort of said, look, I'm sorry because like if I'd known or wish we could have done more or something. And I just said, look, that's not the point. The point is you weren't trying to do anything. We weren't talking about it. You were just being you. You weren't trying to, I wasn't a charity case. I wasn't like just someone you're trying to save. I'm just me. You're just you. And that consistency made all the difference in a life where I had a lot of inconsistency and a lot of challenge. And I didn't need you to do more than you did. I mean, like we're sitting here now, you did obviously exactly the right amount. And it was because you just were there and you've just been there. Both Greg and Nina have always been amazing to me. And in combination with my mother and other people, some really great footy coaches and some really great friends. And, I've always had that support that's managed to pull me through. And I just wanted to express my gratitude for the mundane effort that it just goes into that, for just the consistency.
Well, to my point before, we don't need to know the impact that we've had on others. And this is a perfect example of, you not having that need to disclose what was happening to you at home, but just having that trust in these beautiful people who were just beautiful because they are. Yeah. Not because they were trying to do anything in particular, but had that impact. I grew up in trauma also, and my person was Tim Watson. Tim Watson was 15 years old when he came.
Playing footy already at 15.
Well, that's right. That's when he came to Melbourne, and that's when I started writing to him, and he would write back to me at that age.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that saved my life. And he's been on that show, and we've had that discussion as well. And he said the same thing. I'm sorry I didn't know what was actually happening to you, but just the fact that he responded to all of my letters. Well, he said there were a couple that ended up in the bottom of his bag.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I mean, honestly, now after many years working with people and communities that are in need, there is a bit of a different relationship. And it's not better or worse, but it's different when people come to you for help at the beginning and you are working with them to help them. It is different. And you need a combination of both of those things. I think you need what I call human help, which is just like consistency, people next to you holding your hand, bumping you up when you need it. They're around, you can rely on them. If you can't rely on them for material help, you can rely on them for caring about you.
Yes.
And everyone needs that. You always need that. And I think it's a critical part of what's going on. And sometimes when you go to people and ask for help, people let that get in the way of the connection they can have as humans. And I totally understand that, because you've come and you're asking for something or you need something, and it sets a relationship up a little bit differently. But, I was blessed. I was blessed to have these people in my life. I continue to be blessed. And
They're listening in today? Or?
I'm not. No, they'll be preparing for lunch. They'll be cooking all the things, I imagine. I just got a text before that someone's blown up one of their tires, so they'll be fixing that. But also, to speak to not knowing your impact, you also can't know at the time, because you can only know that was the bottom on reflection. And that's why I think it's so important another ordinary change people can make is to reflect on the ways that people have looked after you in your life, and go back and say, 5 years ago when I was having that really rough time and you took me out for coffee, or you did this thing, like that bumped me back on track. And just rewarding people for that consistency and that time that they put in then, it's a gift for everyone. And if more people did that, then we would value it more. It's a quiet little thing that between most people most of the time. It doesn't need to go anywhere else. It doesn't need to be an announcement, but it means so much more. It's so much deeper than some of the other ways that we look to try and find ways to
just be nice.
Just be nice, and don't just think about what's happening now. Like, look back and go, you know what? This time, I was at my bottom then, and who was there, and how did I get out, and what did they do? I'm going to go back and just let them know, because I couldn't know then. I was still in the middle of it. But now that I can, I just want to say thanks, and that makes a huge difference, I think.
Oh, definitely. That's gratitude. In fact, we're going to go to a break, but just yesterday I was sitting with one of my younger clients. He's only 12. He's got a lot going on in his life. And we sat down for the session. The first thing he said was, really good to see you, Rae.
Yeah.
How are you?
Lovely.
And he actually meant it. And I answered that question. It took me about 5 minutes, because I thought, you've asked me, so I'm actually going to tell you what's going on for me. And it was just felt so good to be asked how you are. And not because he's only 12 and not because he's a client. It's just felt good to be asked. So, yeah.
And really, some days it matters more than other days. Some days you just need to be asked. Some days you're like, yeah, I'm good. And then some days you're like, oh, thanks so much. I really needed someone to care today, And you don't know. No one knows. No. So you can ask people. Sometimes it's going to be massive. Sometimes they're not going to care. But ask anyway. Exactly. Ask anyway.
So, Josh, this is something I know that you're getting very excited about.
Oh, here we go.
Because we now come to our next very special guest song request.
Amazing.
The fact that I can say that is a bit Dr. Seuss-ish, but anyway.
I like it.
And the corresponding cryptic clue, here goes. Played almost... you're going to get this straight away now that I think about it.
Okay.
Played almost all of the 1989 grand final with broken ribs and a ruptured kidney.
I mean, Dermot Brereton. Oh, Dermot Kennedy. There we go.
There you go. Oh,
89, one of the great grand final. I think the greatest game of AFL football that's ever been played. It is an absolute belter. So, yeah, that's right up my wheelhouse.
So there you go. And you got it straight away.
Yep.
Won't go into the fact that that's kind of just self-harming playing like that. But anyway, go Dermy. You're a star. Another kind person in the world. Don't go away, folks. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about what it feels like being Josh Reid Jones. We'll be right back. Find the Light by David
Ramirez.
I was going to say Ramirez, and I thought, I'm going to mess that up as well.
No, you've done well. I mean, you haven't done well with queuing up the right song, but that's okay. It's still a lovely song, and we still got Dermot to come, so that's great.
We have, given the time. Oh, we're coming up to 11:15 now. Just a little bit of a heads up, people. We do have to jump to the football at 11:30. AFL, Box Hill Hawks and Collingwood are playing, and 3WBC will be, as we always do, broadcasting live for that match. But we're going to continue the show, Josh and I.
Amazing.
Because, as I said, Phil Edwards, our president and technical extraordinaire, has managed to allow us to keep recording the show, which will be produced onto my YouTube channel in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, Phil, you're a legend. Get well. Now, I think I do have a little bit more of a shout out. No shout outs. That might come a bit later in the show. But if you've just tuned in, I'm joined by Josh Reid Jones. He's the founder of the JBN project, or Just Be Nice, which aims to move people to an equality of opportunity through 3 core streams, which are housing, employment, and mental health. If you listen to the show later, you will hear Josh talk about that earlier in the show, about those 3 pillars, which are really, really important. Josh, thank you so far for coming in today as well and sharing so much so far of you, which I know has just been just right.
It's my pleasure. No, I appreciate you having me. And it's okay. I enjoy yarning. So
you do. I can tell. I do too. Now, one thing that I really love, and this kind of ties into a little story as well. You weren't always this social warrior. Or maybe you were.
No, definitely was.
You were.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Just not formally.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'll let you finish your little you finish the thing, and then we'll see. I'll see if I need to correct anything or update some
Well,
stuff.
early in life you qualified as a carpenter.
Yep.
So which is interesting. I've grown up with tradies, and most of my work is blue collar, high risk male men. So I see a lot of carpenters and engineers. And I highly value tradespeople. And I think, a trade is, people that elect to do a trade are often seen as copping out of school or not completing education or losers. And I hate that so much. I shouldn't say hate on the radio. That's terrible. But anyway, the other day, I took a day off with my little sweetheart, Rory. He's my 14-year-old. And we nicked off down to the Mornington Peninsula Hot Springs.
Oh,
the only
living the dream.
one day of his school holidays that I've spent with him. Anyway, we're sitting in the pools and we love listening to conversations. Anyway, there's a clutch of girls in there and they're chatting away and they're bagging their housemate. And anyway, this one girl, she's got a new boyfriend and she's talking all about this boyfriend. Anyway, one of the girls goes, "So what does he do?" That Australian question. "So what does he do?" She goes, "He's a chippy." You know what they said? They all said collectively, "Oh, nice, nice." Good on you girls.
There we go. Yeah.
So anyway, I just loved that little story the other day.
So I see you bumped into my new girlfriend the other day at the hot spring day.
Yeah, she was about 16.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's not what. That's
So that's where it all started. And you were self-employed from a very young age.
Yeah. So it's funny because... Can
I just tell you, Josh, you've got precisely probably about 10 minutes to skip through.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, I'll hustle through it. When I was at school, because I was young, then I was going to finish really early, and I actually did an apprenticeship and uni at the same time. So I did a undergraduate degree in arts with a double major in philosophy and media and communications, and I did that at the same time that I did my carpentry apprenticeship. And the reason that I did an apprenticeship was I was playing footy at a club, and I started as a cabinet maker because one of the guys just hooked me up with some work, and I had to catch the train out to Hallam to do that. And then they offered me an apprenticeship on third-year wages because I was the only one in the whole place that actually finished high school, and I was all right, physically can handle it and whatever. And so I started as a cabinet making apprentice because I went to uni and I thought it was going to be like Dead Poets Society. I thought it was going to be like this whole wonderful thing where everyone's so clever and we're all going deep on all the things. But it was just the same people from high school pretty much. I was still helping the same people with their homework and whatever. And I thought, okay. And at the same time at the uni, they sacked about like 60% of the academics in the areas that I was studying, in lieu of doing things like for business and international students and that sort of stuff. This was in the early 2000s. And I was like, well, that doesn't look great for employment opportunities. Obviously, incredibly conscious of who's going to look after mum and how we're going to pay the bills, and went, well, a trade makes sense. They do all right, and I don't mind the work, and it's good, and I don't need to be at uni all the time. It's not like Dead Poets Society. So I did a bunch of stuff by correspondence because online wasn't a thing. It was correspondence then, and when a couple of builders went broke and my cabinet making boss had to let a few of us go, couple of qualified guys, a couple of things, and I was the highest paid apprentice above my pay station. So I left, and then I busted my knee playing footy, and I couldn't work on a building site for a bit. So I did a short stint at Telstra, and then I finished off my carpentry apprenticeship I went back to trade school and picked up a job as a carpenter with a guy that I played footy with at a new senior football club, and that guy Dan was sort of instrumental in that process. The whole way through, I did work at all kinds of different kinds of social work and working with at-risk kids through like the St Kilda PCYC, running boxing programs, and we go out to high-density housing commissions and stuff, work with the kids out there. And I always was doing that stuff on the side anyway. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, it was to make sure that I could pay the bills, it was to make sure I had enough to look after mum. It was something where the employment seemed a bit more stable. I liked university because I enjoyed that, and I kind of did it all. And I've always just juggled heaps of stuff at once. So, yeah, it's kind of it's a weird one, and it's great work. I love apprenticeships as a concept. I think it teaches you a lot of really valuable lessons in life that I don't think university graduates get. Because if you read the collateral about university, they're all telling you you're job ready, you're ready to go, ready for the industry, you know what's going on, and that's not true. You mostly walk out and people go, "Whatever, mate, you finished uni." But when you do an apprenticeship, you walk in the door and they go, "You don't know anything. Shut up." And it's not in a mean way, because it's, you don't know anything yet. But none of us knew anything when we were day one, year one apprentices. You don't know anything now, you will know stuff later. You won't know all the things at the end of your apprenticeship because your boss has been doing it for 40 years, but you'll keep knowing more and you'll keep getting better. And some people know more than you, and that's okay. And that's a great spot to be for your lifelong development of your brain.
Well, my middle son, George, he all he ever wanted to do since he was a baby pretty much was cook. And
awesome. What a gift for you.
Well, not really. But there was a little mini documentary made about him recently because he's actually done very, very well with it. And he's talking about his trajectory, saying, he was allowed to leave high school at year 10 and go to William Angliss, and now and how I know that I got a lot of stick for that, about why are you letting your son cop out of school. I mean, now he works with Ben Sherry at Attica, and he's about to move overseas, and he's got his own mental health charity, and he does amazing work. That's all from leaving school at year 10. He didn't leave school, like as he said he's been working really hard for the last he's only 25, and he's worked the last 10 years crafting so much that he's made a place for himself in the world doing good.
Yeah, it's great. And there's lots, look, better or worse or whatever, it's a bit of a weird cultural thing to think that it's somehow you're copping out. But also the people who make those decisions, and I've been in the rooms with lots of these places, and half the time I sit in there and I go, has anyone here actually been to both TAFE and university? Like, because it's very rare. There's not many. You don't find many people that have done it. And I go, so the people making decisions about TAFE or making about this, like a lot of them didn't go to TAFE because TAFE doesn't really lead to like high-level public service administrative jobs usually. It's a bit rare, and certainly not from trades. There's not many. They don't usually end up in administration making decisions about TAFE and higher education and that sort of stuff.
No.
So, yeah, for me, it's interesting to see how people interpret that. But, I mean...
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, and look, people, if you want to know more about Josh, just look him up on the Just Be Nice Project website. There's a lot about him. In fact, just Google his name and you'll find out lots of things. But you also owned a gym as well with your brother? Yeah. And another way of giving back to the community, or giving to the community and enabling people to help themselves. What was that experience like? Yeah, so
the sort of timeline was construction. I had a little construction company, and it was going well, but it was really busy. And I ended up my gig there ended up being pretty much going to jobs that were running over budget and running late. And this was post GFC. Places were going broke flat out. It took a little bit of a delay to get to Australia, where so 2008 was the GFC, and then 9-10, the money started getting tight for construction here. We're probably going to see some of this happening in the next little bit. I know Porter Davis just died the other day. So I would go in to bring these up to date, because there was this gap in the market between probably like 3 million to $50 million builds where either small builders were overextended or big builders were sending down people who only were project managers from university, didn't know the trades. And I could kind of navigate all of the things, could write an email, could talk to the banks, could actually put on a tool bag, could see what was happening in the jobs. And so that was the work I was doing, but no one would take my guys, and I had like a great team of people working for me. No one would take them without me. So there was only so many jobs I could keep on top of. And it was getting in the way of the work that I wanted to do, which turned into JBN, but was at the time mostly working with at-risk kids. And so I started a clothing company in sportswear because at that time there was a massive gap. No one was doing this kind of thing. And thought, I'll be able to hand off heaps of this work, like eventually. I won't have to do it all. And that'll be great. It'll give me more time to do this other stuff, which I can't do in construction. And then through that, we had a warehouse, and in the warehouse we had this empty space, and I was working with gyms, and I was doing a lot of stuff with CrossFit gyms and CrossFit people and people making stuff. Then met an equipment guy. We said, we'll sell the equipment. We'll set up a gym down here. People can come and use it. Started a gym. And I'd been through all the pathways to sport. I played footy in the VFL and had been training really hard since I realised I could train and got good at footy and all that kind of stuff. Athletics, footy, all this kind of stuff. And that turned into having a gym, which was just a sort of evolution of trying to find a spot for people that were training that I knew. And then my brother, who's an excellent PT, he came on and started running the gym. And so we had that. And we did all kinds of stuff there, community stuff. And commercially it wasn't great, but we had a great time and great community. And that was lots of fun. And then that didn't last. That didn't get through COVID, unfortunately. So he's off in the army now, and
wow.
we press on. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, gosh, I could jump down that rabbit hole. See how he's going there.
He's going well, really well. Yeah. He's going good.
Hopefully, things have sort of improved in how people's experience, is within.
Yeah. He's an officer, so he went to officer school up in Canberra.
Yeah.
And I think everyone says, every older person says, whoever came after them got it easier. That seems to be the trajectory in the military. Like, you guys had it easier, which some of the changes I think are very positive, but that certainly seems to be the deal. He's enjoyed his time so far.
Oh, fantastic! I'd love to know more about your siblings as well, but time is not permitting at the moment, and I know that we are going to be switching over very soon, and I'm sure Gabby Beams, who is our program manager here, does an amazing job. I know she's here to conduct the footy while Phil is at home with his nursing his COVID, so she'll probably poke her head in the door soon. But tell me about Colony 47.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bit of a love for Tasmania and have done quite a bit of work down in Tassie in the mental health and men's health space, especially around suicide prevention. So I'm keen to know about Colony 47.
Yeah, so I'm a director at Colony 47, which is a social service provider down in Tassie. It's one of the biggest ones down there. It's certainly, I believe it's the biggest non-religious. It doesn't have a religious affiliation at all, just in social service, mostly working in youth employment and housing. That's the main focus of the organisation. Got about 110 people that work there, and they do based mostly in the south, mostly in the southeast, but we're changing some programs up in the north. They do fantastic work, run a few places for crisis housing, work on some programs for transitional housing, long-term housing, got employment programs. For the first few years I was there, we had massive employment programs. They've since changed. The nature of funding in the space means that the government dictates a lot of what's going on, both the federal and state governments. So what they're asking for and what they're funding sort of dictates what's available in the space. And so we had some large employment programs that got moved because they changed the programs. But it's an amazing team of people from the top to the bottom. The executive are really amazing. The board are fantastic. Everyone there, I just think they're so wonderful. And the people who do the work, they just care so deeply. They're very, very skilled, very talented. It's just, it's a really wonderful organisation that has deep roots. I think it's the 50th anniversary this year in Tassie. I'm the only person I think who's ever been on the board that isn't a Tasmanian, and that was just
wow.
in aid of getting appointed for some skills that they were looking for that I just happened to have a few years ago. And it's great, and I love it, and they do such great work, and Tassie's a beautiful place, and there's a lot to do. There's plenty of people that need help, but
incredible
we're
place.
onto it. Yeah,
we were very lucky to do a lap of Tasmania last year. Myself,
awesome.
my daughter Rose, and my son Rory, who's just texted me to say, "Can you give me a shout out, Mum?"
You've had a few, mate, but you can have another one. Shout out to Rory.
He's just woken up,
Yeah.
probably. He was going to come in today. He goes, "Oh, do you want me to come in?" Because he usually helps me out. But said, "No, he's sleeping. He's 14. He's
Awesome.
growing
Gotta grow.
at a rate of knots."
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we are going to switch over now to the football. It is 29 minutes past 11. I'm just wondering if Gabby's going to come to my window and tell me what to do. But I do have some instructions here. Just for the sake of the fact that we aren't going to be live now, we're going to go to the recording.
Mm-hmm.
For our audience that is listening in now, Josh, oh, here she comes.
Here we go.
Say good boy. Oh, and then you'll do the rest.
I'll do the rest. Turn the studio off and I'll do the rest.
Thank you, Gabby.
Amazing.
There you go. But I just want to thank you, Josh, in front of our listening
Oh,
audience.
yeah, well, thank you.
Again, for your generosity, your openness and willingness to share today and come in on a Sunday.
No, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure, and I look forward to listening to a few more later on.
Great. Well, okay, so at 11:30 I'll put the output off and I press A. So we're doing that. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the recording.